What if a wound didn't open on the skin but inside the rules of the room? What if a man's pulse matched a buried frequency under a desert town? What if the lights didn't flicker from bad wiring, but from something answering back? They will him in at 1:13 a.m. Eli Navarro, 38, maintenance tech at the Los Arcos power station. No visible burns. Yet heat ripples under his skin like a map, as if a diagram were boiling inside him. Nurse Mara Quinn clips the monitor. The EKG steadies into a metronome too perfect for a human chest. His temperature is normal until the thermometer touches him. It jumps 4 degrees, then falls before she can blink. "Talk to me, Eli," she says. "Down," he croaks. "Not outside, inside. Under the intake." Dr. Avery orders labs, CT, tox screen. The portable X-ray prints a film with faint banding, more interference that doesn't make anatomical sense. The EMT who found him says there was no fire, no arc, only Eli on the switchback stairs muttering that he couldn't look in the glass. "In the glass?" Mara asks. "He said it sent him back wrong." CT spins. Down the corridor, lights dim in a neat progression like a tide pulling lumens. A vending machine upstairs returns a stream of quarters with identical spacing. At the nurse's station, the radio loses a pop chorus and settles on a tone you feel more than hear. The janitor pauses mid-mop, as if a name he never knew just arrived. Slices come off the scanner. Microedema along vessels, fine striations aligned to nothing in any textbook. "How did he get this?" Avery whispers. Eli drifts and returns in pulses. Each time his lips form the same word as if the syllables were a key. "Deepwell." The room reacts like a circuit. First utterance. The wall clock skips ahead 3 seconds. Second. The ballast hum shifts by a hair, knife on porcelain out of tune. Third. The monitor freezes, resumes, the waveform cleanly cut as if edited by an invisible hand. "What is Deepwell?" Mara asks. Eli meets her eyes, measuring how much truth can survive a chart. "We rerouted load through the old auxiliary line," he rasps. "Voltage was clean. Then the numbers echoed. Not sound readings. The meters repeated in reverse like playback from under the floor. Helmets rang. The room tilted in one direction. I looked at the panel and saw myself half a second late. A man in a gray suit appears beside Avery without introduction. "Mr. Navarro will be transferred to a facility at Kirtland," he says, voice flat as paperwork. "There was an industrial anomaly. Your cooperation is appreciated." "What kind of anomaly?" Mara asks. "A concluded one. 2 Air Force medics take the gurney before dawn." By noon, Eli's admission vanishes from the system. A maintenance ticket inherits his file ID. The physical chart remains, a folder with blank pages. When Mara returns to the bay, the heart printer is still spooling paper from a lead no longer attached to a heart. The strip curls on the floor like pale ribbon. She presses her fingers to the sheet where he lay. The fabric is cool. The lights, steady all morning, give a single, precise blink. No whisper, no breath, only the sense of a number traveling from under Los Arcos, meeting its twin in this room, and bouncing back. Too exact to be chance, too orderly to be natural, too late to be undone. What happens to a place once the map stops admitting it exists? What kind of fence needs guards without insignia posted at night watching nothing? And what hums in the ground long after the generators are silent? Locals call it the old water intake station, though no one remembers water ever coming out of it. 20 miles north of Los Arcos, beside the I-25 service road, a square of concrete rises from desert dust. No signs, no windows, just a gate of corrugated steel and a pair of soldiers in sand-stained uniforms stripped of rank. At dawn, their shadows stretch east, identical in length, as if rehearsed. Truckers say the air there is heavier. Their radios lose signal in a perfect circle half a mile wide. The hum begins low, like a transformer idling underground, then fades the moment you look for its source. People blame old wiring, army experiments, magnetic storms, whatever helps the mind close a door. On the second week of March, Ray Hanley, an electrician from town, receives a call from federal engineers. They need temporary power restored inside the fenced compound. Ray's wife remembers he ironed his shirt twice that morning, something he never did. He drives out in his blue pickup before noon, toolbox in the back, a lunch his daughter packed. Sandwich, apple, note. Come home early, Dad. He doesn't. At dusk he returns, but the pickup's headlights stay on in the driveway for almost an hour before his son goes out and finds him sitting behind the wheel, awake but distant. His hands rest on the steering wheel as if waiting for an instruction he's forgotten. When his wife asks what happened, he says only, "They were already there." He doesn't elaborate, just locks himself in the shed that night, tools still inside the truck. Over the next weeks, he refuses sleep. His eyes redden, then lose focus entirely, like he's seeing alignment marks no one else can. He writes on the walls of the shed with chalk, concentric circles and a phrase repeated in perfect spacing, "Relay closed." A month later, Ray collapses on his porch. The coroner calls it cardiac arrest. No toxins, no trauma, no burns. The Los Arcos Sentinel prints 2 inches on page 7. Local electrician dies of natural causes. Death not work-related. That same evening, power flickers across 3 neighborhoods, synchronized to the minute Ray was pronounced dead. After midnight, residents of the trailer park nearest the highway report a vibration running through the ground. Steady, mathematical, not random like wind. Dogs refuse to leave porches. Cats vanish entirely. By morning, every clock radio along County Route 14 has reset itself to 12 o'clock, though there'd been no outage recorded by the utility. When Sheriff Nolan Price drives out to the fence line to check the site, he finds the same 2 soldiers standing motionless, faces unreadable behind desert goggles. He shows his badge. They don't react. The chain gate is sealed with a lock newer than the fence itself. On the steel, someone has painted a single warning in stenciled black letters. Keep circuit stable. Price touches the metal and feels a faint pulse, like static, but not electric. It's mechanical rhythm, measured, consistent like a heart designed by geometry. He steps back. By noon, the heat turns the horizon into liquid glass. The facility sits behind it, a mirage that refuses to fade. Inside, maybe machines still run, or maybe the desert itself learned the pattern and won't stop repeating it. That night, in the silent hours between radio frequencies, the city's transmission tower catches a ghost reading, 6 identical pulses, then 1 long one. The technician on duty logs it automatically as local interference. But in the morning, when Mara Quinn drives past the desert on her way to the hospital, her car's dashboard flickers once, precisely in rhythm with those pulses. She doesn't hear anything. She just feels, for a moment, that every instrument around her is listening. How do children learn symbols no one ever taught them? What makes a playground diagram match a blueprint locked behind concrete doors? And why do the smallest minds notice first when something in the ground starts to think? By mid-April, Los Arcos Elementary becomes the quietest place in town. Recess shrinks to hushed cliques of kids drawing with chalk in the parking lot. Perfect circles, joined petals, radiating spokes. Every shape is the same. Inside the ring they write, in uneven letters, "He's underneath." Teachers scrub the pavement each morning, and by afternoon the pattern returns, aligned exactly where it was before. Nurse reports begin stacking up. 6 students with sudden nosebleeds during class, 3 with short vertigo spells. The town physician, Dr. Heller, calls it a seasonal reaction to dry air. The school board files it under psychosomatic stress. But the janitor swears the fluorescent tubes over room 12 flicker only when the drawings are visible outside. That weekend, Principal Adams walks the empty playground at dusk. He counts 20 chalk circles before realizing the geometry is more precise than chance, each centered on a hairline crack in the asphalt, as if the pavement had measured itself. He kneels to touch one line. The surface is warm. Across town, metalworkers finishing a late shift at the rail yard pause when a faint tone slides through the night. High, resonant, more vibration than sound. It lasts 8 seconds, stops, then repeats an hour later. Reporters describe it as industrial feedback. The power company denies any transmission faults. Only the people living nearest the old water tower admit the truth aloud. The sound feels like something large adjusting its weight underground. On Monday morning, the tower itself wears a new mark. Rust has been scoured clean from a 12-foot patch of metal, revealing an etched circle, 12 petals and a triangle at the center. No one claims responsibility. The town council blames vandals, though no ladder that tall exists in Los Arcos. At night, a local DJ at KRLX 94.2 FM catches a faint pulse bleeding through the signal between songs. 6 short bursts, then one long. He records it, thinking it's Morse code, but the spacing doesn't match any alphabet. When he plays it back, the waveform mirrors perfectly around the middle, like an echo that folds time instead of space. The next morning, children at the elementary draw again. Only now, beneath he's underneath, they add a new line, copied from nowhere they could have seen. IT learns in patterns. No one in Los Arcos laughs at chalk drawings anymore. How does information vanish from paper but leave a trace in air? Who signs a night shift log with a name that never belonged to a person? And why do the erasures in Los Arcos always line up with the word Deepwell? The Los Arcos Geophysical Laboratory sits 2 blocks from City Hall, small, gray, half-forgotten. Inside, technician Michael Rios, 26, reviews magnetic soil readings from the perimeter around the restricted zone. The last week's data shows a strange oscillation. Polarity reversals in perfect rhythm every 11 seconds. He prints the sequence, planning to ask his supervisor in the morning. Next day, the records are gone. The drawer that held the reels is empty, and the file on his terminal reverts to an older version as if someone had rolled time backward. When he checks the duty roster, the technician listed for the night shift is E. Tuller. Rios doesn't recognize the name. He cross-references payroll, personnel, nothing. No Tuller has ever worked there, yet the log carries his signature, careful, deliberate, in black ink. Michael asks the night guard, who shrugs. There was someone in the basement office, the guard says. Didn't talk. Left around 3. Thought he was one of yours. At lunch, Rios visits the county database for a wider search. The librarian stares at the screen, uneasy. That name flashes and disappears, she says. Like the system doesn't want to hold it. She prints a blank page with a single black dot where the header should be. That evening, Michael drives home along the frontage road, windows down. A delivery truck approaches in the opposite lane, headlights too bright. It swerves once, corrects, then veers again, straight into him. Witnesses later say the truck had no license plates, just a faint stenciled number. 12. The driver steps out, dazed, repeating one sentence before police arrive. Don't look down. The coroner's report lists blunt trauma, instantaneous death. Police call it mechanical failure. Within 24 hours, the truck is reclaimed by an unspecified federal agency. Its records vanish with it. At the lab, Rios's desk is cleared before sunrise. A notice on the door reads office under maintenance. In the storage vault, where temperature sensors once clicked softly, a single reel of magnetic tape remains on the shelf. Its label has been scraped clean, but under angled light, faint impressions appear. Numbers repeating backward, symmetrical like mirrored code. When the reel is played, the speakers emit no sound, only a low electric rhythm matching the pulse logged weeks earlier near the fence line. The intern listening notes the pattern by hand. 7 cycles later, the power cuts for exactly 11 seconds, returns as if nothing happened. On his notepad, one line stands out beneath the numbers. Signal source unknown. Do not reconstruct. What makes a reflection appear before the light that creates it? How do eyes exist in a place that has never seen sunlight? And why does everyone in Los Arcos pretend not to notice when the air itself starts watching back? It begins at dawn, at the corner kiosk on East Garrison Street. Laura Pena, 42, arrives early to prepare the coffee urns. The alley beside her stand is narrow, lined with rusting garages. While unlocking the gate, she notices movement between the metal walls. A vertical shimmer, tall, not human tall but proportioned wrong, edges quivering as if viewed through heat. She thinks it's a trick of early light until two reflections appear within it, twin points mirroring the orange bulb over her head. Not glowing, reflecting, too bright, too deliberate, and separated by a span that suggests a face. The reflection moves, not closer but clearer, as if focus itself obeys it. Laura drops the key ring. Every sound around her flattens. The highway hum, the wind through tin, and she can't tell whether the silence is external or inside her own head. Then, in an instant, the shimmer retracts, folding out of perspective like a page turning the wrong way. The garages stand ordinary again. When a customer finds her 15 minutes later, she's sitting on the curb, eyes open, mouth moving without voice. At the hospital, no injury is found. For 8 hours, she cannot speak. The only phrase she writes on a clipboard before discharge: "It saw through me." That week, she sells her kiosk lease and moves to her sister's house in Arizona. Within days, others claim similar glimpses. Something tall crossing peripheral vision near the rail yard. The suggestion of mirrored points in the dark glass of shop windows. No one reports it formally, but the phrase, "the thing with eyes," circulates across town like static. On KRLX 94.2 FM, the midnight host interrupts a weather update to mention an audio anomaly. Between 2 o'clock and 2:06 a.m., their transmitter picks up a string of impulses. Short bursts, grouped in pairs, separated by long pauses. The engineer decodes them as binary. When converted to text, the message reads, "Don't dig." The station files a note with the telecommunications office, but the incident never appears in official logs. That night, one of the engineers stays after hours, replaying the signal on loop. He notices that with each repetition, the waveform subtly alters, frequencies reshaping themselves into symmetry, as if the message were calibrating to the room. Across Los Arcos, power substations report minor surges at the exact minute the signal airs. A warehouse camera facing the I-25 service road records a single frame of distortion. Two bright ovals suspended midair, spaced like eyes reflecting a flash. The following morning, Mara Quinn, still uneasy after Navarro's disappearance, drives past the same alley where Laura had her encounter. In the chrome of her car's side mirror, something duplicates the street behind her, half a second out of sync. She blinks, and it's gone. But her reflection lingers just a fraction longer than it should. By evening, the rumor has its title, whispered in store aisles and waiting rooms. The thing with eyes. No one can describe its body. Only the intervals between light where its gaze briefly fits, and the way every mirror in Los Arcos now seems a little too alert, as if waiting for the next frame to arrive first. How deep must the ground open before a town realizes it's being hollowed from within? What kind of door rusts from the inside out? And why does the soil remember shapes it was never meant to hold? It happens at 4:17 p.m. on a windless Wednesday. Behind the Vista Court housing block, a patch of asphalt sighs inward. Slow first, then sudden collapse. By the time residents run outside, a perfect circular pit has formed, 6 feet across, its edge smooth as cut stone. At the bottom glints a metal hatch, half buried, seams crusted not with surface rust but corrosion blooming under the paint. City maintenance arrives before dusk. Foreman Dean Harker lowers a floodlight and radios the depth, 9 feet. He peers down, says he sees an old service vault sealed tight. Against protocol, he climbs in himself. The others watch his helmet light shrink, then vanish. His line goes slack. They call his name. The radio returns a soft burst of static. No words, only the measured click of his mic toggling on and off in a rhythm too even to be panic. Search teams work through the night. At sunrise, the hatch lies twisted open, hinges bent outward, as though something inside had pushed. Harker is gone. Only his helmet is found, visor melted from within. Later that morning, janitor Ruth Delgado, who cleans the nearby medical annex, fails to return from her break. Her body is discovered 2 hours later at the sinkhole's edge. No external injuries, no burns, but internal tissue marked by linear electrical scoring. The coroner's note reads, "Electrical damage without dermal breach." The report is stamped inconclusive. County engineers arrive with instruments and install 4 radiation dosimeters around the pit. The readings stay flat through the night, but at exactly 12:03 p.m., the moment storm clouds gather over the desert, the gauges spike. Not chaotic surges, but rhythmic pulses, 4 per second, synchronized across every meter. When the clouds thin, the readings return to 0. A bystander films the overcast noon on his camcorder. In the footage, each lightning flash stops mid-frame for a fraction of a second, like film jamming in the projector. The pause lines up with every recorded pulse. By evening, the city seals the area with fresh concrete, posts no entry utility work signs, and files the incident as ground instability. Yet, under the poured slab, the dosimeters continue ticking faintly through the night, quiet, precise, consistent, as if measuring something still adjusting below the surface. How can separate minds share the same coordinates? When does coincidence begin to sound like mathematics? And what if dreams are just surveillance from another direction? Dr. Leonard Keane, psychiatrist at Los Arcos General, begins to notice a pattern. Over 2 weeks, 19 patients, unrelated, different ages, none on the same medication, describe the same recurring dream. Each account arrives with clinical precision. A stairwell made of concrete, descending endlessly, lit by a white glow that isn't light. Every dreamer stops at the same landing where the air feels dense, as if gravity collects there. They all wake at the same moment, when they realize something is counting their steps for them. Keane files the phenomenon under collective resonance, his term for synchronized hallucination induced by an external frequency. He sketches diagrams, sine waves overlapping until they form a single solid band. In the margins he writes, "Dreams are aligning, not contagion, transmission." His notes grow methodical. Each night he interviews new patients, recording exact timestamps of their awakenings. The patterns match between 3:11 and 3:13 a.m. Every subject sits up with a start, heart rate elevated, body temperature 1 degree higher than baseline. One woman insists she woke with sand under her nails. Another claims she heard numbers repeating in her head, 12, 12, 12, then silence. Keane installs a portable EEG machine in his office, attaching himself to the sensors before sleep. The recording from that night shows a uniform spike precisely at 3:12, followed by a frequency drop into inaudible range. The waveform ends cleanly, no fade, as if the dream had been cut mid-transmission. He reports his findings to the hospital board. They listen, polite but unmoved, labeling it pattern stress. When he mentions the restricted zone and the word Deepwell, the meeting ends abruptly. Security escorts him out under the pretense of exhaustion. 3 days later, staff find his office sealed with government tape, Biohazard 6A stamped across the door. Officially, Keane has been transferred for treatment. No one knows where. His patients are reassigned to other doctors, their files redacted to remove all dream references. The only surviving fragment is his final notebook, discovered later in a storage locker marked for disposal. The last page is dated April 26th. A line written in calm, deliberate hand. "The dreams are no longer mine. They are using the same frequency that calls through soil." Beneath it, faint pencil marks form what looks like an unfinished sentence, erased halfway through. Under strong light, 2 words are still legible, pressed into the paper grain. It breathes. But in this rewritten version of Los Arcos, the word doesn't describe lungs or air. Keane's handwriting defines it differently in the margin beside. Systemic motion without origin. Something somewhere under the desert has begun to move. Not alive, not dead, just perfectly synchronized. How far underground does jurisdiction end? At what depth do blueprints start lying? And when you go looking for what's missing in Los Arcos, who's really the one being found? Former Air Force investigator John Harker thought he'd retired from classified work. After 2 decades tracing accidents the government never admitted happened, he'd learned one rule. Every disappearance begins with a map someone altered afterward. So when the Department of Defense called about anomalous losses in Los Arcos County, he didn't need convincing. He packed light. Sidearm, analog recorder, 3 volunteers he trusted more than he trusted orders. His team assembled at dusk outside the fenced perimeter: Ellen Ward, structural engineer; Santiago Cruz, demolition specialist; and Private Leon Pike, a young comms officer loaned by the base at Kirtland. Their entry point was the sinkhole slab, already cracking around the edges. Beneath it lay a service tunnel marked on no plan except one fax to Harker in a blank envelope. The header read, Deepwell/level access 0. They cut through the concrete, descended an aluminum ladder slick with condensation. The air was motionless, dry but heavy, as if weighed by static. Concrete walls shimmered faintly under their headlamps, fine mineral dust rising with each breath. Harker's radio clicked once every 15 seconds. Automatic beacon. At the 5th click, the signal light died. "Line's gone," Pike reported. "No bounce, no carrier." "Switch to hardwire," Harker said, but the cable spooled uselessly. Every meter deeper, the reel lengthened without resistance, as though space itself had stretched. Ward tapped the wall. It gave a dull, elastic thump. "Feels like it's not solid," she murmured. The tunnel angled down in geometric precision, each landing exactly 12 steps apart. On the 5th level, their flashlights flickered, not randomly but in alternating pattern, left to right like a scanner bar. For a moment, the corridor appeared wider, architecture rearranging to accommodate something unseen. A column of air shifted, not flowing, but rotating in place. The light beams bent subtly, as if refracted by movement too slow for the eye. Then came the shadow, except there was no source. It stretched across the floor, perfectly sharp, belonging to no one in the team. Pike aimed his lamp at it. The outline didn't vanish, only flattened thinner, as if absorbing illumination instead of reflecting it. Ward whispered, "Is it heat distortion?" Harker's throat felt dry. "No heat down here." The shadow pulsed once, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat on the recorder display. Then a sound, not voice, not whisper, more like inference, words forming in thought instead of ears. "You matched the signal." Cruz flinched, dropped his flashlight. It rolled, beams spinning across the walls, and the walls moved. Not physically, but optically, each surface flexing in minute increments, like film swelling in the projector gate. "We need to go," Ward said, backing up. The echo of her steps returned too fast, as if space ahead had shortened. "Retreat now," Harker ordered. Pike didn't answer. He stood rigid, headset still on, eyes unfocused. The transmitter on his chest emitted faint ticking, the same 11-second cycle Michael Rios once charted at the lab. Cruz grabbed him by the shoulder, but the boy was cold, not dead cold, more like tempered metal. Harker pulled him away. The radio on his belt restarted itself, broadcasting a scrambled fragment of their own voices, delayed by half a second. "Move!" They climbed fast. On the second landing, the steps seemed to stretch 12, 13, 15, before looping back to 10. Ellen stumbled, screaming that the handrail was warm. When Harker looked, the metal had faint finger shapes impressed into it from inside the pipe. Cruz was the first to vanish. One moment ahead on the stairs, the next replaced by light distortion, as if he'd stepped behind an invisible lens. Ward reached for him, and her hand passed through air thicker than water. Harker dragged her back. By the time he reached the upper shaft, the ladder no longer matched the angle of descent. It pointed sideways toward nothing. He climbed anyway, hauling Ward until the surface air broke against them like a cold tide. They emerged near dawn. The opening sealed behind them with a resonant click, leaving a smooth plain of rock where the hole had been. Ward's pulse was erratic, her eyes dilated unevenly. She kept repeating, "It's still rearranging," until the medics took her. Harker said nothing. His eyes, once gray, had gone dark. Not empty, but reflective, twin mirrors faintly catching light that wasn't there. When debriefed, he offered a single line before lapsing into silence. "We didn't find the source. It found geometry in us." By evening, the department logged the operation as terminated. Only one man returned, and whatever he brought back, it didn't need to breathe or speak. It only needed structure. What happens when a city forgets the sound of its own current? How long can silence imitate order before people start to realize it's designed? And what remains in the dark once every source of light reports the same failure? The blackout begins at 11:43 p.m. the last Thursday of November. One moment Los Arcos hums with the steady noise of transformers. The next, everything folds into absence. Street lamps extinguish row by row. A smooth wave moving from the industrial district toward downtown like someone dragging an eraser across the map. In the hospital, backup generators refuse to start. Flashlights cut through gray corridors where monitors still glow faintly though unplugged, showing no data, just a frozen line of 12 repeating digits. Mara Quinn stands at the window and sees the desert horizon shimmer once, a heat haze under a cold sky. Then the ground moves, not shaking but flexing, a slow ripple that shifts dust into rings. Residents pour onto the streets. The air feels dense, metallic, the scent of ozone thick as before a storm. From the dried riverbed on the town's edge rises a faint vapor, illuminated only by starlight warm against the chill night, moving with a rhythm too deliberate to be wind. At 12:07 a.m., 6 children vanish from different parts of town. Parents searching the empty lots find no footprints, no struggle, just patches of asphalt still radiating warmth. A police report notes localized temperature anomaly. The word Deepwell is scratched into the concrete wall near one of the sites, letters carved clean as if by precision tools. By 2 a.m., the ground settles. Power surges back without warning. Lamps flare, radios reset to static. On the main intersection, workers discover a perfect circle burned into the pavement. 6 feet wide, smooth-edged, depth unknown. The asphalt beneath has collapsed into a hollow cavity exhaling faint heat. Before sunrise, a government crew arrives, seals the hole with fresh concrete, and posts signs about gas line maintenance. When daylight returns, no one speaks of the blackout. The Los Arcos Sentinel skips publication that week. The radio station plays only pre-recorded jingles on loop. Official reports list no missing children. Yet every parent who lost someone receives the same anonymous letter. Containment complete. Do not dig. That evening, as streetlights hum back to life, the town smells faintly of iron. The air carries a dry taste, like metal cooling after use. People return indoors, turning on televisions that show the same static image. 12 concentric rings fading slowly to black. By morning, memory itself feels dimmed. No one can explain what night the power failed, or why every clock in Los Arcos now runs 3 minutes fast. What does a shutdown mean when the system keeps rewriting its own end? Who authorizes destruction once the command language no longer belongs to people? And when silence finally arrives, how can anyone be sure it's really off? January 3, 1980. Deep beneath Los Arcos, the control facility once known as Deepwell Complex is reactivated for the last time. The Department of Defense calls it a containment exercise, but the technicians on-site understand the code name, Protocol D, full erasure. 3 operators stand in the reinforced hub 22 meters below ground, entering launch strings that have not been used since the Cold War. Their monitors pulse in monochrome. Rows of zeros, columns of command prompts blinking in perfect symmetry. At 2:47 a.m., the first anomaly appears. The input field freezes, then redraws itself, characters rearranged into a human skull rendered in wireframe. The sockets fill with twin white ellipses that follow the motion of the nearest operator. Not animation, not reflection, but response. The technician stares, transfixed. The image blinks once. Then a line of text overwrites the interface. You have repeated the sequence. Seconds later, the auto-detonation timer initiates on its own. The operators scramble to confirm identity keys, but the voice print system answers in someone else's tone. John Harker's, calm and exhausted. We weren't the first. We're just the last. Every speaker in the complex repeats the phrase, each echo fractionally delayed until the words overlap into a dense mechanical chord. The detonation fails to execute. Instead, every display turns black except for one. A single waveform oscillating at 11 cycles per second. the same rhythm recorded in the soil months earlier. At 3:01 a.m., communications with the surface end abruptly. Sensors register a brief thermal spike and then flatline. Above ground, the desert flickers once with bluish light visible from 40 miles away, then goes still. By sunrise, Los Arcos is silent. The facility's coordinates are struck from federal maps, the town fenced off, its population relocated for safety. Years later, 1986, a junior archivist at the Los Alamos National Laboratory catalogs declassified storage boxes from defunct projects. One container has no paperwork, only a rectangular metal plate, dull gray, etched with a 12-petaled emblem and the Latin phrase somnus expectat, sleep waits. Under the label, dried residue darkens the steel. The archivist swabs it, expecting rust. The test comes back human. The blood type matches no existing record in the database. She files a report, but before the sample can be retested, the plate disappears from evidence. The only entry left in the inventory log is a single line automatically generated by the system at midnight. Archive merged with source. Process complete. Outside, the desert wind moves through Los Arcos again, stirring no dust, only the faint shimmer of heat over sealed concrete, as if something beneath it still calculates time, waiting for the next sequence to repeat.